Hey, how you guys doing today? We want to welcome you on to another episode of the Counterpoise Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Everett Stevenson, joined today with my other co-host.
Hey everybody, my name is Malik Foster, another co-host for the Count Voice podcast.
Hey everybody, and I'm your third co-host. My name is Samantha Adams, and today we have a very interesting topic to discuss. Today we are talking about taxation and reparations, and what triggered it is the fact that our federal government has proposed to get rid of certain federal taxes. Let's just be clear, that's different from state taxes. States tax you individually, as many of you know. The feds tax you as well. And so they're talking about getting rid of certain federal taxes. And, we are all for reparations over here at Counterpoise. So, we wanted to discuss what type of effect that could have on the possibility of anybody ever getting reparations. And if we do, what it would look like. So first, we want to just go ahead and break down what's going on with the taxes. So, I think you had some information about what was being proposed, right?
Correct. Yeah. So, recently, like Sam was just mentioning, there was some conversation about a potential House bill that was looking to be voted upon, in which there was a conversation that would abolish the IRS in a sense and take away a few taxes. One of them being the income tax, which most people, if you're not familiar with, there's different tax brackets in which they tax the income of certain individuals. So, for some of our younger viewers, if you work a job and you decide that you work a job and there's certain taxes that's taken out of your check, depending on if, like she said as well, some cities, some counties that have taxes, and we're talking about income tax particularly, have taxes as well as city tax, state tax, and then you also have a federal tax, and then there's taxes for things like Social Security. There's taxes for Medicaid, other programs that is taken out of the income that individuals earn. Now, within that, the conversation led towards this potential proposed bill would allow for there to be no more income tax. And then additionally, there were looking at making cuts to the gift tax, which if you guys haven't seen, we did an episode about that. The gift tax, I believe the donation tax is another one, or not a donation tax, but the gift tax was one that I was also familiar with. And then I think there were one or two other ones that may have been as well included.
I think the death tax was one of them.
Yeah, oh yeah, the death tax. And then it may be one other tax that may be included that's in this proposal as well. Now, with that being said, one of the ways that we also wanted to link this, and eventually we'll talk about this as well, to the reparations, is just considering how the conversation would go from how cutting taxes, whether it's from income taxes and the ancillary taxes that we just stated, cutting taxes, how that would affect, one, the ability for the government, federal governments to pay back taxes reparations. And then two, if then two as well, how does that affect the wealth gap? And that's something I definitely wanted us to look at, us having this conversation on that too. So I don't know if you guys want to jump in real quick before I give my opinion on some of the things. That was the real question, though. Like, I want to keep going.
Yeah, I wanted to get in. This is kind of hit home a little bit for us, Sam and I, because we're out in the state of Georgia, and Representative Buddy Carter. He's the one who proposed this fair tax, as they call it. And under this tax, it would, as my co-host Everett was saying, that it would eliminate pretty much a lot of those taxes that that we're accustomed to paying for certain things, and keep the tax code less convoluted and more simple, right? So that's some of the ideas here, and actually relieve the burdens of small business owners and businesses, and promote investments and the American dream as well. So more Americans can save more and stuff like that. So it'd be one fair, uniform tax, and it would basically abolish the IRS, because there wouldn't be a need for 87,000 agents and all this complex tax code that we currently have under the current system. So that's a little bit more background on it. I don't know if you had anything else before we get into more of our thoughts on it, Sam.
Yeah, the amount of taxes, right? Like we can sit here all day and talk about the possibility of there just being one tax and abolishing the IRS and all that sounds good in theory, but when you start talking about the numbers and get into the breakdown of the numbers, then that's a totally different discussion, right? So like think about it. If you go to the store and you go to buy something, depending on what state you live in, there's sales tax, right? And that percentage could range. It could be 5%. It could be, some states don't have sales tax. Could be 9%, 12%, something like that. So it's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I don't think that I am, is that this one tax is something like 30%. Am I right about that, E? You're mute.
Correct. Some propose that it could be anywhere from around 23 to 30%. Again, a lot of it's depending on the item which is being purchased, but yeah, that's the tax amount. And I think to that point, what people were looking at was just in general how that's around the tax amount that average citizens are taxed on their day-to-day incomes. So it was like, instead of you like earning $100 and only having $77 to spend, instead, if you spend $100, if something costs you rather $77, it costs more like $100, once you purchase it. So,
right. So what I was gonna say was, you change that. You have to remember they're not teaching financial literacy in school, right? So you're giving people more money and expecting them to spend more money on things that that's already on the rise as far as costs are concerned. I don't think that people necessarily have the financial wherewithal to not blow it on something else or not spend it. I don't want to say irresponsibly, but they may not necessarily have the wherewithal or the knowledge to spend it in accordance with what would be conducive to this circumstance, right? So, and that's just in general. That's not like, speaking about one particular group of people or whatever. And so I think think about it. We are already in a place of inflation, right? And if you go to the grocery store today, eggs cost so much damn money, it doesn't even make sense. Now imagine you go to the grocery store, you're barely getting anything, get to the register and you spend double or 30, not double, but maybe 30% more from what you are already spending at the rate that it is right now. Because remember, the reason why groceries are so high is since the pandemic, there's been not even just groceries, like everything is high because since the pandemic, a lot of prices had to go up because of supply and demand, right? So with that being said, and you didn't have enough people to put the things together or pick the produce or whatever it is, in order to get that stuff out there at the rate that it needed to be. So the cost is higher. And so with that being said, you have a higher cost on everything, and then you're going to add more taxes on the back end as opposed to taking it from the front end. And I think that right there is going to create more problems than it's going to actually fix.
Yeah, I can agree to a sense. It's almost what a good friend of mine will say, the trick hand, you know what I'm saying? It's the overhand for the underplay. And essentially it sounds good because again, if you're a great steward of your money, and you can pick and choose them, you will be able to, feel like you will have a better advantage in how you move because, again, you're only going to get that tax once you purchase things. But again, we know you all have to purchase certain things to live, lights, electricity, phones, insurance, things of that nature. And I guess it's sales tax, or maybe for the tax of goods and services as well. But whatever it is that that you offer, of businesses that have to now charge, let's say this 30% tax on top of their services as well. It's going to require people to make those tough decisions over, like you were mentioning earlier, maybe groceries this week, or certain decisions that they have to make on the back end. And while it sounds good, to the average person, because it's like, yeah, great, but it just, again, happens to have a bigger effect in my mind because of like the estate tax, which we talked about in the past episode. You can pass down around $16 million before you even taxed. And if you're telling me that the number that was given to most Americans is $16 million that you can pass down before it's taxed, and now you're going to wipe that away completely, that means that, tons of money that normally would have came in will now transfer easily to grandchildren, children. And that's where I wanted to say how it can affect, essentially the wealth gap, because now you may never be able to catch up. You're already paying more for services to live. You're going to continuously get taxed on everything that you purchase. And then you're not able to, there's no like curtailing or shortcutting, if you will, the transfer of certain funds if they're like cash assets and not necessarily something that may be protected in other ways. So yeah, I definitely think that's something that people have to look at. While of course, it would make it a lot easier for people who are business people who have to write off certain things and do certain things for their businesses, year in and year out, and providing verification for things of that nature. It still definitely has a bigger effect. And I think it's one that, would compound the issue of the conversation of, the wealth gap and reparations. But I don't know, Malik, if you had anything else you wanted to talk about this on this as well.
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of pushback on it being, I think I'm getting the idea that like Sam and you feel like maybe this could potentially be more of a burden tax wise on the common American and not as big of a benefit as people may think, right? Like having that one uniform tax, even though it simplifies things, y'all guys are eloquently, and I think rightfully so, pointing out, this may not be what y'all think it is, right? Like depending on the rate, they want to tax you that 23 to 30% on everything you consume could potentially add up, right? So I'm looking at it like this, just to push back, like your payroll. Like, so when you get paid, if you're just an average American working a 9 to 5 job, a typical 9 to 5 job, then your employer takes taxes before you even get your paycheck. And then when tax season comes, the federal government is going to want their taxes due off of that money that you have already. So you're getting taxed twice, even before you get paid. Once you're spending money, there's taxes there. There's taxes everywhere. I also mentioned, there's the gift tax. There's the death taxes. There's the other tax, payroll, as I mentioned. So there's a bunch of taxes that we all pay. So those being eliminated, I think would help. But I think where it really would help is business owners, right? Like that payroll tax, that's big, right? Payroll is really big. If we don't have to worry about taxes on that will really help out business owners. And I think that's who they're really trying to help out here is like small business owners, those kind of people in businesses.
Wait, yeah. Malik, I have a question for you. I need you to clarify something for me. Yeah. You said you're essentially getting taxed twice. Who is getting taxed twice?
The common American is right now under the current system. If you say if you make $5,000 a year, that's taxed, and then if you make over a certain amount of money, like let's say even 60,000 a year, you're probably gonna have to pay taxes again. You get what I'm saying? So like not
I
only
hear what you're saying.
what I'm saying
Yeah,
is
to a degree.
what
It
I'm
depends
saying
on, I
is
think, if you have multiple
there's
incomes.
hold
And
on, let me explain it. Like you have the payroll tax, you get taxed there, and then when the federal government tax bill is due, you get taxed again off that money.
No. So what happens is when you get your payroll tax, state and federal taxes come out of your paycheck. And then when you go to file your taxes, if there
Right,
has
right, right.
enough, if
Yeah.
enough money has not been withdrawn, taken from your check, your payroll, then you have to pay the remainder of the balance due. So that's how that works. It's not, you're not necessarily
Right. Yeah. You're right. But yeah. You're right.
but it also can happen the way that he was just mentioning if the individual one has income coming in from different places, and that income reaches a higher level. That's why they say you're not in my tax bracket. Meaning, like if you have a certain income level that reaches past, I think we may have broke this down one time on one of our episodes, but it's like maybe because each year it changes, and if we give me a second, I'll be able to look at the brackets here. But if your income exceeds a certain level, you get taxed at a certain level.
But you still
and
get
if
taxed
you're
twice though. So what Sam said is correct, but I'm still correct. We're both correct, but I said it wrong. So like right now, there's still a sales consumptions tax. Essentially, we do pay taxes on stuff we consume, but we also get paid. Tax on our income. Like we get taxed multiple times in different
correct, here
ways.
we go. So
Go
in
ahead.
2020, the taxable brackets was if you made less than 20,000, you were at 10% income tax. If you made less than 81,000, you were taxed at what 2,000 plus 12% of the amount over 1999 or $19,099 or $900. If you made anywhere between 800, I'll just share the screen with this.
Yeah.
If you
Share the
made anywhere
screen.
between,
Yeah.
I got you. One second.
You have permission? Yeah, I think you do. But yeah, like what he's going over is a very complex system of
So
how
if you make anywhere between, I'm sorry, Malik. If you make anywhere between 81 and 172,000, you have to pay, roughly 10,000 in taxes, which this may be, the amount that they may have taken from you out of your check, or you have to pay that back plus another 22% on the amount of money that you made over 81,000. And so on and so forth, as you guys see the rest, 30,000 plus 24% over 172,000.
Oh, hey, E, let me say something real quick. So just to let people know, like, so as far as this tax, what he's going over, so that first, what is it, the 19,000, that's taxed at 10%. But once you make over that amount of money is taxed at that percent. Like it's like a compounding weird thing. So you don't get this like, okay, I made 329,000, so I'm only getting taxed at 32%. No, once you make that amount, that's getting taxed at 32%, but the amounts you made underneath get taxed at those other percentages. So it's very complex and convoluted, and that's another reason why they want to kind of abolish the IRS. I believe President Biden is trying to look to fund them even more, expand their funding. So the Republicans, especially from Georgia, Buddy Carter, he's leading the charge on trying to get that.
Yeah, because the way that this reads to me, I'm sorry to interrupt. The way that this reads to me is that let's take the first bracket. Well, that's just 10% of your taxable income. The second bracket.
Oh, and this. I'm sorry, my bad, because there's different ones too for married and non-married.
Please go back to the one we were just looking at.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess you could go on the single one. That's the weird one, right?
This one right here, where it has 19. This one right here, it had 1901 or whatever, right? 1901,000 to 81,000. So the way that I read that is that it says.
Okay, here we go.
Yeah. Good. That's right there.
All right, cool. So the first one, The first one.
Y'all can see everything right still.
No, we see yeah,
calendar or something.
Yeah, food.
All right. So what I saw was it had an amount plus 12% over a certain rate. Yeah. So the way that I understand that, right, is it says, for example, if you make under $9,950 a year, you get taxed at 10%. But if you make $9,051 to $40,052, and this is, I believe, for as a single filer, right? Anything you're gonna get that you're gonna have $995 due plus 12% of the amount over 9,950. So once you hit that 9,950, you're gonna have to pay 12% of taxes plus $995, whatever that is. So that 12% is gonna be based on the amount that you make. So if you make $20,000, it's gonna be 12% of the $20,000 plus $995. And that's the reason, that's the way that they calculate that. And of course, higher the tax bracket, the more money you're gonna have to pay in taxes. And so, I get what you're saying, Malik, as it relates to being taxed twice, because you are paying that flat rate plus a percentage. However, it's being taken out of your check. It's not like you have to become some mathematician to figure out how much money you got to pay.
But even how they calculate it, it's kind of like they're doing it to
it's
you.
It's
very that too, guys. Hold on. I want to say one thing too.
Yeah,
like twofold. Because one, we can see also too, when you're a married couple, as you can see, there is benefits to that. You know what I'm saying, for these taxes things. So, we always joke about, what's the benefits of being married? Well, shoot, if y'all, even if you, I guess, even if y'all ain't
say it, spit it out.
Even if you ain't a double income household, you know what I'm saying? You're looking at it right here like this. Well, they still ain't taxing me as much as they would be taxing me if I was filing single. But, at the same time, versus if y'all was, though, you getting taxed at a little bit less. I think right here for a single, it's like 209 or 523. You feel me? 209 starts anywhere in the second bracket on down to this third. So, up here, you at the 32%. But if you're married, you know what I'm saying, you could dang near get 100 and some odd more, if not 200 some odd more thousand before, you are taxed at that percentage rate. And I think you got to pay half as much money initially in a check. But also to your point too that you was making, Sam, if you have this one job, though, generally they'll be able to do all of your taxes for you. If you have incomes coming in from multiple different places and you're not necessarily knowing exactly what that's going to be, then you have to make that adjustment based off of how much you receive at the end of the year, and then going back and figuring out exactly how much you was taxed throughout the other incomes that you did receive, and make that adjustment. Taxes is very.
Go ahead.
Especially when you're an independent contractor. Because when you're an independent contractor, they don't deduct taxes from your check. You have to figure that out because you're going to end up having to pay it at the end of the year based on how much money you make or earn.
Absolutely.
So there's that aspect of it. One of the other things that we wanted to kind of touch on is, what does this bill look like? Like, is it going to be a retroactive bill? Like, are we going back to a certain place as it relates to taxes? Are they going to say, okay, well, no gift tax, but anybody who paid gift tax after last year, then they'll get a refund? Like, how is that going to work? What is that going to look like? I honestly don't think that they're going to make it retroactive, but but anything is possible because the government really likes to try to keep their money in their pocket. They'll give it back to us in other ways, but they don't often dish out money like how we would think that they would. I mean, they have.
Right. So you might get a credit before you get your money back.
Right. You see what I'm saying? And so, the question then becomes, where's that money going to go? Is it going to be retroactive? If it is, who's going to get that money, right? Is everybody going to get that money? Is that money going to go to a fund? Is it going to turn into something else? What is that going to look like? And that's one of the things that they haven't, as far as I know, haven't mentioned. And I just was curious as to what you guys' thoughts were on that.
I think that's interesting. Personally, maybe that might be a fund that you could have that helps to go towards paying reparations. You know, hey, if you was owed taxes before this bill came through and you got no payment plan with us, we garnishing unless you get this money in us so we can put towards this fund. You know what I'm saying? I think that may help. I don't know how much money they owe currently from individuals and if that would fit the bill, but that's just some optimistic thinking outside the box. But I think though, like, you know, that is something that needs to be considered because again, people do have payment plans that they may have had with the current government. And, you know, if you do abolish it, it's like, okay, well, am I white free? Like, you know what I'm saying? Is the debt cleared or, you know, do I still have to continue to pay it back and where do those funds go?
Yeah, I think there's going to be like some sort of cutoff. Like, say if the bill got implemented this year, like maybe it would start in like maybe another 2 years, it would be cut off, or maybe like another year we would have of taxes, and then after that, it'll be cut off. So you just would have to pay what's backdated, and then going forward, you wouldn't have to pay any of the rest of that stuff. Yeah, because I don't think they would be grandfathering people in. I doubt that, but yeah. Like, so for example, 2024, right? They'll implement it. So any 2023 stuff, we won't have to worry about that. Or, for example, maybe they might do that. Or 2024.
Yeah, but the question becomes,
have to worry about that.
But what do they do about the people who owe money in taxes, right? Like, if
I don't think they would be grandfathered in. That's what I'm saying. Like, I think they would still have to pay.
I think that they would still have to pay.
Yeah, I think they would still have to pay, but like going forward, because that was under the old legislation, right? So they would still have to pay that old bill due. Just like sometimes when you have that old debt, sometimes they'll wipe off the debts, sometimes they won't. So
yeah, I think that it won't be grandfathered in because I think they're gonna be in the no ex post factos law portion. And for those of y'all that don't know what ex post factos law means, it means that a law that's created and then backdating the law, right? So when Everett and I were talking about this the other day, one of the examples we talked about was decriminalization of marijuana. So it can be perceived as though the decriminalization of marijuana was an ex post facto law because what it did was it went back and it wiped away people's records. It went away and it released people from prison for possession, sales, distribution of marijuana, right? But the thing about it is an ex post facto law is almost like, all right, boom, if you committed a crime when it was illegal and then you change the law for the purpose of, making, if something was legal when you did it and you create a law for the purpose of making it illegal now, so that you backdate it just so you can get that person to go to jail. An example is Bill Cosby, right? When Bill Cosby had his trial, I believe it was the governor of California at the time, not the governor now, it was a different governor. He was considering creating an ex post facto law where I think it was like to criminalize the use of Quaaludes back from 1970, whatever year it was, he was giving out Quaaludes, just so he could convict Bill Cosby of that distribution today. That is unconstitutional. You cannot do that because the goal is to punish somebody for something that they did when the act was legal, and you can't. Right. So with marijuana, that's a little different because what you're doing is you're actually doing the opposite. You're decriminalizing something that may have been a criminal act at the time when the law was acted. So, you know, as it relates to these tax bills, the question then becomes, and that's what we're talking about as far as ex post factos, are they going to allow, and that's why Malik is talking about grandfathering them in. If you owe $10,000 in taxes, let's say it's a payroll tax, or if it's a gift tax, or whatever kind of tax that they're proposing that you get rid of, you have that tax bill, you owe the government $10,000. The question that I was posing is whether or not they are going to say, okay, we're getting rid of these taxes, you no longer have to pay this bill. Or are they going to say, yeah, we're getting rid of these taxes, but you still have to pay this bill?
Yeah.
And what I think and what Malika's saying is, no, they're going to say, you still got to pay this bill. And so I think that is important, right? Because then you're going to be looking like, damn, I just missed the cut. Or, you know what I mean? You're going to have those types of issues as it relates to trying to figure out how you're going to pay a bill that's no longer something that somebody 2 days later may have, run into a similar issue. Y'all could have did the exact same thing. It's just about a date and as to when that tax law becomes effective and when that person accumulated those taxes. So I think it's going to be important to watch and see what happens. And I think more will be revealed.
Yeah, because I think it is important though, just to have a little summary of like some of my thoughts on this. I think it is important to definitely reform our tax code because it is way too complex and is very convoluted. As you can see, the tax bracket doesn't even make any sense because you're thinking you're getting taxed. Oh, okay, you're getting taxed at 10%, 12%, but it's 12% plus this additional money. That's like I don't know how they get this calculation. It's just thrown out there. Like it's not just a standard uniform percentage, so it's pretty complex. But I like this new proposed legislation from the standpoint that it is trying to change things. Is it perfect? No. But obviously, it definitely hinges on the percentage of that consumption tax. What is that going to be? Is there going to be any concessions in terms of like, okay, we're going to get rid of most of the taxes, but you'll still have to pay something else outside of the consumption tax in order to lower the consumption tax. They may alter it, modify and revise it to that degree. So that's some things that you could expect if this does get, ratified and made into law. So I don't know if the Democrats are on board with it because, the Biden administration is planning on expanding the funding for the IRS, expanding the funding for the 87,000 agents. So
I don't think we should expect that with this president.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that consumption tax bill is going to make it through during this term. Maybe something post 2024 election. Maybe we could see something potentially come through, or we get a Republican president. So I'm just saying.
I mean, I'm not saying necessarily we need a Republican president. I just think
I see it more likely happening that way, not current like as things currently stand.
I just think we need somebody that's going to be different from what we've had in the past.
But I like the idea of reforming the code. Do I agree with everything in it? No.
I agree with reforming the tax code. I don't necessarily agree with this. I think that in theory it sounds good, but I just think once in practice it's going to be a complete disaster. Because here's the other thing. The other thing about it is, when you're talking about reparations, that money has to come from somewhere. And typically, when the government is giving out money, that money is coming from taxes, right? And so when you look at California, for example, the state of California has chosen to give out reparations. And when they're giving out their reparations, yes, it comes from taxes, but understand something, let's just be very clear. Reparations in California do not go to descendants of slaves. They go out because understand something. California was not a state that had slavery. Okay, they were not one of the states that practiced selling Black people for chattel. Okay, as chattel rather, on property. However, California, much like every other state in this country, has exercised Jim Crow and other forms of
Basically,
systemic
they
and
codified
systematic,
laws discriminating against.
right, systemic and systematic racism.
Yeah.
Exactly. So their reparations that they're giving out are to repair people from the systemic and systematic racism that Black folks have experienced in their state, right? And so Shade Room, I think it was Shade Room, had posted an article a couple weeks ago, and it was about that. Um, and I pulled it up. And so one of the things that they are proposing is that $5 million to each long-term Black resident will go out to each long-term Black resident, and they'll grant total debt forgiveness due to the decades of systematic repression, along with giving some, I think it was free tuition, if I'm not mistaken. And so in order to be eligible for the program, the applicant must be 18 years old, have identified as a Black or African American on public documents for at least 10 years. I don't like that contingency. And they must also prove at least 2 of 8 additional criteria, choosing from a list which includes born in San Francisco between 1940 and 1996, as proof of residency in San Francisco for the last 13 years, and or personally or direct descendant of someone incarcerated by or failed or the war on drugs, by the failed war on drugs. The reason why I don't like that one thing is because people like Rachel Dolezal could go. Let's say you have somebody who's lived in California for all these years, and for the last 10 years they've identified as Black, but they are Caucasian, and they fall within all, and they meet all the other criteria. They would then become eligible. And so it's like, but their struggle hasn't been the same as the rest of ours for their entire lives. So it's just been like that for the last 10 years or whatever, right? So I think that right there is part of the issue that I take with that. However, if you get rid of the taxes, right, how would that have an effect on reparations? If our federal government ever chose to, or decided to offer reparations to the descendants of African slaves, I think that it's important to recognize that that money got to come from somewhere, and because reparations is not free, right? It has to be paid for, and because everything in this country has to be paid for, even if we as Black people are receiving benefits that are free to us, that deficit has to cost money. And they have to figure it out, balance it out, and figure out where that money is going to come from to cover that deficit. Much like they would do when they send money to the Ukraine, right? They need to think about that. When you're talking about sending money as opposed to sending money to Ukraine or other countries, you need to think about sending money to people that help establish, build, and hold up the foundation of this nation every single solitary day. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly. And I think there was a couple other things that you wanted to add to that, right, E?
No, in particular, I think you pretty much hit it all. It was just going in and speaking on how generally when we looked at how, the effects of reparation the effects of the taxation could go into the reparation. We've seen states rather attack it in a couple of different ways. You mentioned what happened in California, and then in particular the city of San Francisco. There's also a state of Illinois in the city of Evanston, and they have offered a reparation program to their residents. Give me just 1 second, I'll be able to grab that. Yeah, and basically what it does is it asks that, residents of Evanston who are seeking, reparations will receive a grant of around $25,000. That grant will be used for either a housing repair to pay down a mortgage, or it could be used as a down payment on a house. And this was to address some of the issues and redlining type of situations in which Evanston, Illinois is practiced in preventing individuals from being able to find housing. And so that's one way that another city has tried to address this issue for its residents. And generally, they were showing how it was limited to like around 120, applicants in that first go round, and how majority of the applicants in their age group was around 70 some odd years old within this town. And so that was one of the things that I was looking at, was the ability to show, exactly who will qualify, how old they are they available to even receive the benefits, and is the benefit adequate enough to address the harm that has been caused. Those are all things that I think we see when we look at the way Evanston attempted to address their housing issue that they have. But there's many other ways that this thing can be addressed, and I'm excited and optimistic by seeing some of these cities taking kind of getting ahead of the ball, not waiting on the federal government to enact something, but using the powers that they have to go ahead and enact laws to try to address some of the wrongdoings that was previously done for residents within their facilities, within their grounds. So, yeah, definitely think that was one of the things that I want to address as well with that, and see how we can continue to have more things going on. I don't know if you guys had anything else, but I was going to go ahead and jump into some of our final thoughts and some of our Black businesses and quotes and everything else that we have.
I just had two things. Like, as far as this is a situation when it comes to reparations and the taxation stuff combined. I think this is a situation where you can backdate it, right? Like Sam had mentioned, like current residents, I believe, right, for San Francisco, $5 million. I believe that's correct. This is a situation where, okay, San Francisco, I don't know the population of Black people. I would have to take a look at that. But, the cost of living is pretty high. So I'm pretty sure most those Blacks that were experiencing that and their descendants are no longer living in San Francisco, because California is already one of the most expensive states to live in already. So if people are facing those discriminations and they come from economically deprived groups, then of course they won't be residents of that place. So I think they should backdate it and, try to figure out people who are actually residents at a certain period of time, or try to figure out some way to expand that criteria. I think that criteria is too strict and restrictive. So it would be very little people that would be benefit from that. Maybe that's why the cash reward is so high, because they figure, oh well, this is a way to kind of get a cheap out by just naming that higher numerical number instead of really repairing the harm that was done back then, from the 1940s all the way to probably the 70s, 80s, and well, currently still to this day, I'm pretty sure. But from that time, 30 or 40-year time period that they listed. And also, as far as the taxation goes, it doesn't have to be a one lump sum. Like everybody think, oh, well, reparations tax, the taxes are going to go up. Well, is the taxes going up tremendously when we're just printing out money to send off to Ukraine? What about when the Native Americans need money? Does that higher the taxes, or when the Asians receive their money from the things that happen, or when the Jewish community receives money? So all these groups are receiving money, except people who help build this country, the foundation, backbone of this country, right? So I don't think it doesn't have to be a one lump sum. If the total is 19 trillion, they don't have to just spend all of it at once. It can be over a period of time. So I believe that it can be spread out successfully. And you don't have to like, even if the number is like $19 trillion that that the committee is supposed to come out with, I believe this year actually, the federal committee is supposed to come up with a number this year. But as far as California, they came up with their $559 billion just with that state alone. So you can only imagine what the other states, their numbers will be, especially the states that actually had slavery during that period of time. So that's really all I wanted to say on that. Unless Sam has something else, so I guess E, you can start the wrap up.
Yeah, totally agree. I definitely think that, again, we need to find more and more ways for us to address that. I think as a way, no one really can get healed until they address the injuries and hurt and harm that's been done, whether it's the injured or the party who has inflicted the pain. If they don't take that accountability, then there's always going to be issues. So that's really all I want just to say on the reparation issue in particular. And as far as the taxation, while I do think that, again, the people can be more suave as far as saving and willing to cut back on some things that they may normally pay for, this could be a great opportunity for the majority of people. However, if that's not something that you're used to and you're used to being a spender, I definitely can see that this could be something that could ultimately be one of the demises to some individuals because they just won't be able to curtail, stop spending money as much as they were before. So that's that. I do want to go ahead and jump into our Black Business of the Month. And again, it's the Muse Group, which is the Miami Urban Contemporary Experience. It's an art production company which uses art exhibits and workshops and other festival productions in order for them to display the different unique cultures that we have here in Miami, which ranges from all over the world. So, yeah, definitely want to highlight them. And then also our book of the month, which is The Spook That's Sat Next to the Door. This was by Sam Greenlee, an excellent book as well. And last but not least, I want to hit you guys with our quote of the month. The quote essentially says, I'm proud to pay taxes in the United States. It's by Arthur Godfrey, rather. I'm proud to pay taxes in the United States. The only thing is I could be just as proud for half the money. I thought that was an excellent little quote to kind of explain how I think a lot of people feel about being here. One of the things that we know of being in America, a lot of people would say that this is one of the greatest countries in the world. We have a lot of liberties here. We have a lot of opportunities and in some areas here that just aren't given to certain people, whether it's their gender or through other reasons that they just aren't able to achieve certain things. And so we are blessed to have those things here, but it also comes at a cost. And I think that that's something that some people are feeling like is a steep cost in order for that to happen. One that also may prevent and hinder other individuals from even being able to achieve said abilities. So I just want to leave y'all with that. Again, you guys can catch our socials that will be posted here at the end of the show here momentarily. We also have want to remind you guys that Wednesday we will be going live on our Instagram page, Counterpoise Podcast, and two of the co-hosts will be going live, going in. We can give you guys a little update for that one. We're gonna be talking about resumes and the things people put on their resumes has been short. So we recently seen things that's been going on with people lying, not even recent, because I guess it's something that's been going on since the beginning of time, but from people, from politicians on down, lying about their resumes recently and some clips and things that came about. So we want to talk about that, give people's experiences, either examples of seeing in which they've seen people lying about them. You guys tap in with us next Wednesday, and we'll be going live with that. Anything else you guys want to drop?
Yeah, nope. I'm also on tag So if ever you're looking for me on Tagged, you can find me at Sam I Yam on Tagged. That's SAMMIYAMN. Other than that, y'all make sure y'all like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, and tell a friend, and we will see y'all on Wednesday.
All right, guys. Peace.